Welcome to Positive Economics. We're still in chapter 4. Today we're going to talk about supply. And what is supply? Supply refers to the quantity of goods or services that firms are willing to make or produce at a given price and time. What is the economic role of the firm, and why does an economy need businesses to create supply? Why does an economy really need businesses to create supply? First, so before we begin, it is important to consider the economic role of the firm and why an economy needs businesses, that is firms, to create supply. So what are the economic role of businesses? One, to facilitate specialization. I want to talk about specialization, which means the concentration of an individual or firms on one aspect of production. So firms sell what they are good at producing and they buy in everything else. So it simply means firms will only produce what they know how to produce, and the rest of the things needed for their operation to scale through, they have to purchase it one way or the other. So a business might produce a bottled water, and in the course of to sell the bottled water, it might need to do advertisement, which it might not be able to do itself. So it has to pay some advertisement company to do that. It might need a bank to put its revenue. It needs to pay the services of it needs to pay for the services of the bank. It might need whatever the business would need that it cannot produce, it has to buy them. That is the first one, which is to facilitate specialization. The second one is to provide different options to a market need. Consumers have a wide variety of tastes, so suppliers need to offer a wide variety of options to them. So consumers want a lot of different things, and for it to be available for them, it means a lot of firms must be available in an economy to produce the wide varieties needed by consumers. The third one, to create employment. The consumer needs to generate income to satisfy their needs, example given housing, and to pursue their wants, example given luxury experiences. Firms provide income generating employment, which is from a paid job in exchange for their work time and skill. Consumers, they have to purchase goods and services, either wants or needs, and to purchase them, they need to generate income. So for them to generate income, businesses have to create job opportunity for them, which consumers will offer them their services, return for wages, which will be used to satisfy their needs and wants. So that takes us to the supply curve. The supply curve. The supplier determines the level of output that it is willing to supply at the prevailing market price, just as utility was the basis of demand. Cost are the basis of supply. For demand, it is all about satisfaction, and when it comes to supply, it's all about cost. So types of supply. We have individual supply, which is the quantity of a good supply by individual firm at the different prices. Then we have the market or aggregate demand, which is the combination of all the supplies of the firm in an individual market at a different price. Then we have the supply schedule. The supply schedule is a table illustrating the different quantities of goods made available for sale at various market prices at any given point in time. You have to take note that the relationship between demand, supply, and price is a positive or direct relationship. Okay, so we have the market or aggregate supply schedule, a table illustrating the total quantities of a good that all firms in the market are willing to make available for sale at various points in time. So go to a supply curve. A supply curve is a graph that shows the positive relationship between supply and the price of a product. An individual supply curve. So a supply curve is what is upward sloping. It means the higher the price, the higher the quantity supply. The lower the price, the lower the quantity supply. So for supply, it is always upward sloping, and that is what we can see here in figure 4.24 and figure 4.25. Then for the market aggregate supply, it's a graph that shows the total quantity of a good that all the firms in the market are willing to make available for sale at various prices. That takes us to other circumstances of supply. What are those things that could bring about changes in supply? Supply is treated by a minimum market price. In order to stay in production in the long term, firms have to cover their costs. Therefore, many goods and services will not be supplied if the market price is a certain minimum price. Any price below this level would not cover their cost and would result in the firm making a loss. Therefore, there will not be any producers entering into the market until this minimum price has been reached. So, one of the reasons why there will be restriction in supply is if prices are below the minimum market price. If prices are below the minimum market price, it simply means firms will not be able to make profit. And as a result of that, it becomes a disincentive for them to continue to supply. So look at it said, for example, let's say that a plant in a gardening center has the following cost: seeds 10 cents, plant out 50 cents, wages of staff 15 minutes to sell the plant for €5, and so on. So the total cost is 6.60. It would not make any sense to sell the plant for less than 6.6. There will not be any profit whatsoever, and it would actually cause the garden center to be in business. So if the total cost of production is 6.6, it is not ideal for the business to sell below 6.6, because if the business sells below 6.6, it simply means the total cost is higher than the total revenue, and as a result of that, the business will be making a loss. So, as you can see, figure 4.27, below P1, nothing is supplied. Below P1, nothing is supplied. At price above P1, the quantity supplied increases. As P increases, the quantity supplied increases. So that the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. Supply is restricted by limited capacity. Supply can also be restricted by limited capacity, which simply means that there is probably shortage of space, shortage of workers, and the rest. So let's read anyway. If your capacity to supply a good may be limited. This could be due to the plant's productive capacity, the shortage of specialized labor. Example given, only a small number of horticultural converters are available, or a shortage of raw materials. Once maximum capacity is reached, the quantity supply remains the same, whatever the price is. So there could be restriction in supply based on restricted capacity. That means limited capacity. So if there is no spare capacity, it becomes difficult for production to continue to take place. As a result of that, supply reduces. For example, the garden center might be able to store only 10,000 plants, which means that it cannot hold any more goods available for sale. As a result, supply is restricted. As you can see, figure 4.28, as price increases up to P1, output increases up to Q1. As price increases above P1, quantity supply will not increase because what? There's no spare capacity. That takes us to fixed supply. There's fixed supply, which is seen as perfectly inelastic supply, which occurs when the supply of a product cannot be changed in the short run, whatever the price is. So we call it a fixed supply because the price elasticity of supply is perfectly inelastic, which simply means that irrespective of the price, the quantity demand supplied remains the same. And one of the reasons for that is that when there's lack of spare capacity, based on the example making, it said examples include perishable goods, example given a supply of fish on a given day. The supply of land and sitting capacity of a stadium, for example, there are 20,000 tickets for a concert, but there's a demand for 60,000. If there are only 20 seats in the concert venue, then no matter what price is offered for tickets, the supply of seats is what fixed. It can be seen here on the graph, which is vertical. Then there can be movement along or a shift in the supply curve. A movement along the supply curve is caused by a change in the price of a good or service. In general, suppliers are willing to produce more of a product at higher prices and less at lower prices. So an increase in the price of a good will result in an increase in quantity supply, whereas a decrease in the price of a good will result in a decrease in the quantity supply. Suppliers only supply goods when the demand or when the price increases. That's why the law of supply states that the higher the price, the higher the quantity supply. The lower the price, the lower the quantity supply. And for movement along the supply curve, there's movement along the supply curve only if there's a change in the price. So here, look at it. As the price increases from 20 to 30, the quantity demanded and supplied increases from 20 to 40. As the price increases further to 50, from 40 to 50, the quantity supply increases from 40 to 80. So this is movement along the supply curve. So there's extension, there's expansion, there's contraction if the price falls, and there's expansion if the price rises. Then we have the shift in supply. A shift in supply will be as a result of a shift So we have a shift in the supply curve. A shift in the supply curve is caused by a change in any non-price determinant of supply, which are other factors that are not supply, that are not price. A shift in supply curve illustrates the different quantity supplied at the same price. This will be discussed later. So the price remains constant, but other factors are non-pricing continue to change. So an increase in supply will bring about a rightward shift in supply curve from XX to S1. And a decrease in supply will bring about a leftward shift in the supply curve from SX to S2. So what factors affect the supply of goods? Its own price. If there's a rise in the price of a good, the quantity supply will generally respond and also rise. This is because it becomes more profitable for firms to supply the good. As the higher the price, the more money they will receive. As a result, many more firms will be attracted into the market and will start supplying the good. So a rise in price bring about an increase in the quantity supply, not because of only the existing firms, but new firms will be attracted to come to the market based on the fact that they can make more revenue or profit. So if the price decreases, the opposite will have happened. Production and supply of the product becomes less profitable. So if the price decreases, the opposite will happen. Production and supply of the product become less profitable, which act as a deterrent to new entrants. It may even see some existing firms leave the market or shut down. So if the price of a product falls, the quantity supply in the market would fall because there's no incentive for firms to make profits. So the supply function, which are price of related goods, cost of production, the factor outside the control of the external factors, technologies, change in technology, subsidy and taxation, objective of the firm, number of firms. So we're going to start with prices of related goods. From the perspective of supply, the price of related goods, that's substitute goods, refers to other goods that are suppliers, that the supplier could produce as an alternative to those currently being produced. If the price of related goods rises, irrespective of whether the price of the good the firm is currently producing remains the same or false, it will become a much more attractive and profitable alternative to switch its resources to the production of the related good. So price of related goods is this. If the price of goods that the business has the opportunity or the capacity to produce increases compared to whatever it's presently producing, if the price of other goods increases, a firm might switch to start producing such goods. As a result of that, the quantity supply of those related goods will rise. And that will shift the supply curve for such goods to the left. The cost of production. The cost of production. The supplier combines raw materials, capital, and labor to produce the output they supply. So these are all costs incurred by the firm. If there's an increase in this cost, then it will be more expensive to manufacture the good. The firm will continue to supply the same quantity of goods at the old price. So there will be a reduction in the quantity supply. So an increase in the cost of production will bring about a fall in the quantity supplied of a product. Why? Because firms will find it difficult to make profit because it becomes more expensive to manufacture such goods. As a result of that, the supply curve will shift leftward from S1 to S2. But a fall in the cost of production will bring about a rightward shift in the supply curve from S1 to S2. Another factor that could bring about a shift in the supply curve is the cost of production. A supplier combines raw materials, capital, and labor to produce the output they supply. These are all inputs. These are all costs incurred by the firm. If there is an increase in these costs, then it will be more expensive to manufacture the good. So the firm will not continue to supply the same quantity of the good at old price. So there will be a reduction in quantity supply. We talked about this before. So the point about the cost of production is that as soon as the cost of production increases, The supply curve for a firm shift leftward. And what are the reasons why we could have an increase in the cost of production? One, it could be as a result of a rise in the cost of labor, which means the amount of money paid to workers increases. A rise in the cost of raw material, which means the amount of money paid to get goods and services, goods increases. An increase in taxes, government taxes increase over time. That could bring about an increase in the cost of production. A reduction in the subsidies. If government withdraw or reduces the subsidy given or entitled to firms, that would also increase their cost of production. All these mentioned bring about a leftward shift in the supply curve, shifting it from S1 to S2. But the supply curve can also shift to the right, from S1 to S2 if there's a fall in the cost of production. And what are the causes of the fall in the cost of production? One, a fall in the labor cost will reduce the cost of workers. It will reduce the cost paid by firms to the workers. A fall in the cost of raw materials. If raw materials become cheaper, then the cost of production falls, and that should shift the supply curve left to rightward. A reduction in taxes will increase profit for firms, and that becomes an incentive for them to produce and to shift the supply curve rightward. An increase in subsidy means the cost of production will fall for firms, and as a result of that, it will increase the supply, shifting the supply curve rightward. Factors, then we'll go to factors outside the control of a firm or unforeseen circumstances. There may be changes in the quantity supply that were never intended by the producer. Favorable or unfavorable. Unplanned factors cannot be forecast, but can influence supply and can result in either an increase or decrease in the quantity supply. So factors that are beyond the control of the business might bring about an increase in the quantity supply of the product or reduction in the quantity supply of the product. So if the plan is favorable, then the supply curve will shift rightward from S1 to S2. But if the plans are if the plans are unfavorable, then the supply curve will shift leftward from S1 to S2. Another factor is the state of technology. When we talk about state of technology, technology makes things become better and faster. So let's read. Technology is a cost-reducing innovation. Technology progress allows firms to produce a given item at a lower cost. Computer prices, for example, have declined radically as technology has improved. Lowering their cost of production, advances in communication technology have lowered telecommunications cost. So the advancement of technology will cause an increase in the quantity supply. So also, new machinery is invented as labor becomes more specialized and efficient. So the factor of production becomes more efficient. It becomes possible to increase the supplier's output even though the payment they receive remain the same. A technological improvement means that the supplier can use inputs more efficiently and the cost of producing a unit of output will fall. The state of technology. Technology makes things become better and faster. And with technology, for example, in equipment like new machinery, it brings about efficiency, and anything that brings about efficiency reduces the cost of production. And as soon as the cost of production reduces, the supply curve will shift rightward from S1 to S2. The next one is the rate of taxation. A reduction in taxes that will result in a reduction in the cost of raw materials of production. As a result, the quantity supply will increase. So a fall in taxation or a cut in taxes will reduce the cost of production, and as a result, increases the supply of a product, shifting the supply curve rightward from S1 to S2. And as the level of taxes increases, the firm profit is reduced. This may force some firms out of production, resulting in a decrease in quantity supply. So an increase in taxes will shift the supply curve leftward from S1 to S2. The subsidy is another factor. An increase in subsidy will increase the cost of production for firms. It will reduce the cost of production for firms. And as a result of that, the supply curve will shift rightward from S1 to S2. A fall or a cut in subsidy will shift the supply curve leftward. Why? Because the cost of production is expected to rise for firms as a result of that. The objective of a firm. If the objective of the firm changes from profit maximization to satisfactory profit, the quantity supply will fall. For example, a bed and breakfast owner in Killarney is open 7 nights a week and has no family time. They don't decide to close on the Saturday at 2 p.m. and not accept guests until the following Tuesday at 2 p.m. Giving herself the weekend off and time with her family, clearly Clearly, profit maximization is not the objective of this B and B, as weekends would be the busiest night. Our objective is to earn satisfactory profit levels, but to also have family time. So, if the objective of a firm changes, it can also affect the supply curve. So, if the objective of a firm changes from profit maximization to profit satisfaction, then supply curve might shift from S1, leftward from S1 to S2. And if the objective is shifting from, the objective is shifting from being profit satisfactory to profit maximization, the supply curve will shift rightward from S1 to S2. The numbers of sellers in the industry. If the number of sellers in the industry decreases, for example, given due to recession, then the overall quantity supply to the market will decrease. In contrast to this, the number of sellers in the industry increased due to an increase in the quantity demand, and then the overall quantity supply to the market will decrease. So an increase in the number of sellers in the market will shift the supply curve rightward, while a fall, reduction in the number of sellers in the market will shift the supply curve leftward. So in summary, an increase in the quantity supply is caused by a fall in price of related goods, a fall in the cost of production, favorable unplanned factors, and improvement in technology, a reduction in taxation or granting of a subsidy, a deliberate increase in output, and an increase in the number of sellers in the industry. All these will shift the supply curve rightward from S1 to S2. So in the next class, we're going to talk about demand and supply equilibrium, which will take us to the price mechanism. Thank you.